Welcome to the Stormsurf Video Surf forecast for Sunday, November 17th. Looking at the significant wave height chart for the North Pacific, we see not a whole lot of activity. This is consistent with what's been going on for about the past week. A little bit of something, what are those 12-foot, 14-foot seas off the U.S. West Coast and Canada. Pretty much nothing around Hawaii. A little bit off Japan, 26-foot seas, but really, and the fetch actually here in the swell direction is actually aimed away from our forecast area towards Japan, so in all a very, very calm pattern. Looking at the jet stream level winds, these are winds that dictate what happens down at the surface in terms of storm heading, storm formation, and whatnot. You see sort of a split stream going on. There's a flow coming off Japan with a bit of it tracking off to the north, ridging way up into the Bering Sea and then working its way into the U.S. West Coast. This was previously a huge ridge that was set up over the dateline, completely blocking pattern with about a 1048 millibar high down at the surface. That is finally starting to die off, and what you see here is a new flow starting to push off Japan, looking much more normal, actually pretty far down south, down at 30 north, winds in the 120 knot range, kind of ridging up towards the dateline, falling into almost a trough, but there's no energy associated with it, and then coming up into another little ridge north of Hawaii. So this is really kind of a hybrid mode that we're in, and at least it's a healing pattern compared to where we were, where all the energy was going up north and pretty much overland. So let's put this into motion, see what we have coming for the next week. You see, as we move into Tuesday, this northern energy completely fades off. All the energy moves into the main southern branch of the jet stream here. 140 knot plus 150 knot winds. This is looking a lot more normal. Again, ridging, then falling into a bit of a trough just west of Hawaii. We'll put that into motion some more. But the trough never really develops. There's no winds down in the bottom of it. It's just kind of a zonal flow. It's kind of a clearing, if anything. Then you get something that almost looks like a trough starting to set up here. This is by Friday in the western Gulf of Alaska. Maybe you get a little bit of a low pressure thing going on there. And we roll it out, and it basically just dissipates, moves east by Saturday. Nothing's going on, and this energy here, again, pure zonal flow now by Sunday. We'll roll it right out to the end. But this is better than where we were with the huge ridge. Now it's just a flat flow, pretty much working its way the whole way across the North Pacific, down at 35 north. Pretty decent, you know, it's a start. It's better than where we were, but nothing really to suggest significant storm development or even reasonably strong gale development. Next, we'll take a look at surface level pressure and winds. As of Sunday, there's basically nothing going on of any interest. A little cutoff low here north of Hawaii, west of the U.S. West Coast, but no winds associated with it. A little bit of something trying to go on off Japan, but just a completely unenergetic pattern. Put it into motion here for the next couple of days. Nothing really happens. You do notice this little bit of a low trying to form. This is in association with that trough we saw just east of the dateline. This is on Wednesday. You get 30, 35 knot winds, put that back. Sort of aimed at Hawaii, nothing remarkable. And it sort of falls south, so that's good. I mean, at least that's good for probably some 11-second period, 12-second period swell maybe. Oh, and then there's some stronger winds forecast by Friday, a little patch of 45 knot winds. Doesn't last very long, and it all pretty much flows east and disintegrates. And then by a week out, you get another one of these systems trying to get going here. This looks better north of Hawaii, 45 knot winds, sort of aimed at Hawaii, sort of at the U.S. West Coast, 180 hours out, completely unbelievable, but it is at least something on the charts, and we've been lacking for anything of any real interest, so we'll take it. So now let's look at significant wave heights in the North Pacific, see how those winds affect production of seas, which result in swell. And we'll just roll this out. You see, again, this pretty quiet pattern, no seas even approaching 18 or 20 foot. Here's that little low north of Hawaii we're looking at Wednesday. What is that? A 24-foot seas falling south for a little bit, pushes a little something towards the islands, not bad, and then another little flare up again up here. I mean, all this is good for like some spurious background swell in the 13-14 second range by sometime next week probably. The islands will get it earlier than that, but anyway. And we'll put this into motion. Then the next little low forms north of Hawaii, another one behind that. Whoops, 20-foot seas, but that, you know, there you are. You're 180 hours out, and all we're seeing is basically small 13-second period swell. But that, again, that's better than nothing, and so we'll take what we can get. Next, I think we should probably go take a look at the long-term trend and see if there's any improvements in the forecast. Next, we're looking at the Southern Oscillation Index. This gives us some hints as to the presence of either El Nino or La Nina, or a more detailed look actually gives you you can see pulses of the Madden-Julian oscillation. The active phase of the MJO is what you want to see. That helps promote storm production in the winter in the North Pacific. Right now, we've had this sort of lackadaisical pattern going on. The numbers are hovering right around zero with little spikes above that, but basically a neutral sort of a pattern. The 30-day average, -3, not so bad. That's, again, still neutral. If it was down like -20, then you'd say, oh, that's a pretty strong pulse of the active phase of the Madden-Julian oscillation. If it was going on long term, you'd say we're into El Nino, but we're basically hovering at neutral. The 90-day average also indicates that with a reading of, what, 1.6. So, yeah, again, holding in the neutral range, nothing to push us one way or the other at this point in time. Here's a graphical look at the 30-day SOI average for the past 2+ years. Here's where we are right now. It's average is down around 3.5, something like that. So this is actually we've been on this downward swing for a while now, which is good. It suggests the active phase of the MJO. It also suggests pushing away from La Nina, which is effectively where we've been back in after the big El Nino of 2009, 2010. We went into La Nina in 2011. Kind of tried to come out of it in 2012, and in the summertime you could see we got this good run of negative numbers, but it all just sort of dissipated as we got into the winter of 2012, 2013, and now we're kind of trying to make a negative push here. So this is all heading in the right direction. It's just a matter of time before we kind of snap out of the funk that we've been in, but unfortunately it might take the better part of the winter to get there. Looking at surface wind anomalies in the West Pacific, Australia here, Philippines over here, you see we have easterly anomalies. That's indicative of the inactive phase of the MJO, again on the equator. So that's not necessarily a good sign. There's all kind of mixed signals. Some indicators say the active phase, some say the inactive. It all sort of washes out and says, well, we're kind of in the middle of nowhere. And that's kind of what this is suggesting right now, that we've got we were kind of in the active phase, now we're heading towards the inactive phase. We got the winds to prove it here, but it's neutral on the date line. And as we get into the actual over towards the East Pacific, you see westerly winds. So what that suggests, this is indicative of the active phase of the MJO. And the MJO moves from west to east, so really what you're seeing is the inactive phase moving over the West Pacific, the active phase exiting and heading to the east. That's the way all these pulses go. And looking a week out, same location, West Pacific, east anomalies continue, suggests the inactive phase is control. And then you look over towards the west, whatever active phase there was is gone. It's all pure neutral, so it's pretty much all inactive phase a week out, at least according to this model. And I believe this is the dynamic model that's driving. So here's another look. This is outgoing long wave radiation over the West Pacific. This yellow stuff indicates a lot of reflectivity off the ocean surface, means typically high pressure and east trade winds, which is exactly what we were seeing in the previous model. And there it is, inactive phase. But you notice 5 days out on the statistical model here, that's what we're looking at, nothing, neutral, and it continues for 15 days. So that's not bad, not particularly good, but it's better than the inactive phase being in control. But then you go look at the dynamic model, which is the same model that was driving the surface wind anomaly charts we looked at just a second ago, and they say inactive phase now, kind of going neutral, kind of coming back. So just these sort of continuous little mini bursts of easterly winds for the next 15 days. Not really a strong inactive phase, but not really a active phase either. And the active phase is even sort of bottled up here in the Indian Ocean, but it isn't doing anything either. So here's a really long-term view, again Pacific Ocean focused on the equator, and you can see the eastward movement of the inactive phase. This is at the jet stream level, so this tends to run about a week ahead of reality down at the surface. But as of the 17th of November, you see inactive phase slowly easing its way into the East Pacific through about the 12th of December. And then behind it you see the active phase trying to wake up about the early part of December and move its way in turn across the equatorial Pacific into the end of December, and then you see the faint signs of yet another inactive phase behind that. So this is pretty normal, you know. It just rotates back and forth, and these pulses work their way across. But the overall picture here is nothing strong one way or the other, nothing pushing the atmosphere one direction or the other, just kind of this lackadaisical pattern, and none of this is really forcing the jet stream one way or the other. It's not adding any extra energy, and it just kind of makes for a kind of a weak storm track and weak storm path. Looking yet even further out, so this model gives you a sense of water temperature buildup in the Nino 3.4 region, which is the typical region used to monitor the formation of El Nino or La Nina. Right now we're sitting here just kind of in a neutral state, nothing going on, and we're basically supposed to hold there. But you notice the trend, at least according to this model, suggests that by April of next year and July of next year, you should have almost a warming of 1 degree in the Nino 3.4 region, which would suggest El Nino. None of this is really believable. There's the spring unpredictability barrier. It happens in the March, April, May, almost into June time frame, and typically it's really hard to see past that. But if something were going to happen, that's when it would happen. So, you know, we'll probably end up going through the winter, making the best of it we can, keeping our eyes in the early spring, late winter time frame, seeing if something develops both in the SOI and then in surface temperatures off of Ecuador, and see if we get some sense of warming going on. That said, let's look at subsurface water temperatures, particularly the anomaly chart right here. This is a pocket of warmer than normal water that's been working its way east. So over here would be the West Pacific. This would be the East Pacific, near the equator, near Ecuador. And this pocket has been steadily moving east. As of right now, it is right in, the leading edge is near about 140 west, 140 to 145, and it started back here a month and a half, 2 months ago, and it's been easing its way east. The idea is that it would continue moving east, hit the coast, gurgle up, and then start branching out and moving back along the surface to the west. This is what you call a Kelvin Wave, pocket of warm water. It's typically created by westerly anomalies in the West Pacific blowing, and it forces warm water down, and then it makes this whole trip across the equatorial Pacific underwater. Pretty interesting stuff here. The idea being that if it makes it the whole way across and it gurgles up and it starts warming surface waters in this area, that has a positive impact on the jet stream and then would help to force maybe a little bit more of the storm track. But it's going to be 2 months, probably month and a half, till it makes it the whole way across. So we're not going to see anything from this for, you know, we're into January, late January, and then even if it does gurgle up, it's going to take a while for the atmosphere to respond, so you're into, you know, March time frame probably. And finally, we'll take a look at surface level water temperatures. Along the equator is what we're mostly interested in. All this summer, what we've been seeing is cooler water gurgling up off of Peru, Ecuador, making this track south of Hawaii and making it to about here before it dissipated. About a month ago, we started seeing the active phase of the MJO doing its thing, and actually there was some warm water building up in this area. Nothing great, you know, but that would be a sign of El Nino, or at least something more positive. As of the past week or two, there's just been, not, I wouldn't say cold water, but just sort of cool, almost neutral temperature water sort of cutting across the equator here. Nothing too dramatic, but it's not allowing this warm water pool here to build up anymore. So again, kind of a neutral picture. The other thing we were watching here was warm water this summer that was working its way off Japan, made it the whole way across, actually moved into Northern California. And then about a month ago, high pressure started setting up. You started getting a lot of north winds off of North and Central California, and upwelling started, and these water temperatures sort of dropped off. But as of late, it seems like the warm water is making a bit more of an inroad. This return feed here east of Hawaii is not very strong. Trades haven't been particularly strong in the islands. It's all kind of looking normal. So this isn't bad. It's not great, but you know what? It's a heck of a lot better than where we've been, where there's been this big pool of cold water off here, massive high pressure north of Hawaii, lots of upwelling, strong trades over the island. That's all pretty much a thing of the past, and I think this winter is going to, you know, if you were just guessing, I'd say this is the transition winter. This is where we move from what has typically been a cool regime for the past 2+3 years, moving into just a normal atmospheric state, and that'll set us up for the following winter. A long way to wait, but that's kind of the way these things work. Everybody loves El Nino, but when you get it, you're going to pay for it for 2 or 3 years afterwards, and that's exactly what we've been dealing with La Nina. So we're past that now, or nearly past it, moving into a neutral regime, which is a good thing. So to wrap it all up, right now, not a whole lot going on. At least the good news is Hawaii got a good pulse of swell. A local storm pushed right south down the islands. Oahu got good sized surf. Maui got good surf. So somebody got something out of this, which is good. Now we're dealing with the hangover from massive high pressure. That's pretty much gone. The jet stream is starting to settle back down. This week will be a recovery week, and hopefully by the week after we're going to start moving back into a weak but normal, more normal winter type pattern, with some small systems starting to move across the North Pacific here, and maybe we'll be back to getting some surf. So that's kind of it for now. Transition period. Fingers crossed that things will improve, and that things will be looking up in the weeks ahead. So that's it for this week. Appreciate you watching. We'll do this next week, same time, same channel, and hopefully we'll have better news for everyone. And again, thanks for watching, and appreciate your comments on YouTube. Good evening.